It is the divisional round of the NFL playoffs with 4 excellent matchups to break down. Plus, we are now 16-7-1 with our picks in the last 4 episodes of the Huddle, so you don't want to miss the 6-pack of plays we've got coming up. It's time to huddle. Let's go. I'd like to start off the show by saying I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to the Green Bay Packers organization and their fans purely for counting them out last week. Like many, I was all over the Dallas Cowboys. I thought it was going to be easy. I thought it was going to be lopsided. I mean, it was, but all for Green Bay, of course. So shame on me for having faith and betting on Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys. With that out of the way here, I'd like to bring in my co-host, Tony Farmer. Tony, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Thank you for showing everybody how to apologize. We talked earlier this season about how Patrick Mahomes isn't very good at that, but you just nailed it right there. Nice work.
We'll cut that out. We'll send it to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs organization, and he can take some notes there. Wildcard weekend done and dusted. We talked last week on the show about, some memorable, how memorable wildcard weekend certainly can be. And I think we got that. We got the big upset with the Packers, that young Packers team in Jerry World, all over the Dallas Cowboys. And I want to talk about Dallas, but first we cut a clip here of what is a defeated Jerry Jones. Let's go ahead and roll that.
I thought we were in a position, everybody in this room thought we were in a position to advance this thing in the playoffs and maybe get as far as our dreams might take us. We didn't do it. I don't have any thoughts about the reasons why or anything to do with the coaching. This one's burned into our soul out here tonight, and Green Bay got a great win. But if you'd told me we'd scored 32, I thought we'd have won it. So a lot of things to reflect on, but I haven't done that at all, and haven't reflected at all on anything about coaching or any of that, and we just are amazed that we're sitting here without another game this coming weekend. I am.
So he's 100% right there when he said, if you had told me we'd scored 32, I thought we'd win. I agree with him 100%. But man, oh man, in your opinion, what happened with Dallas? Elite at home this season, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to answer that, but first I have to ask, did you see the clip of that video with the cry filter on it where like his lip is trembling? Highly recommend. There's been a lot of great like Cowboys memes, people just trashing the Cowboys on the internet, and the cry filter of Jerry Jones, if you're a Cowboys hater like myself growing up a 49er fan, it's a must see. What happened with Dallas though? I think they ran into a hot Packers team. Let's start there. Let's give the Packers some credit. This is a team that has been injured throughout the season, right? Jair Alexander missed 10 games. He played. Aaron Jones missed 6 games this season. He played. Christian Watson missed 8 games this season. He played. Darnell Savage missed 7 games at different points in this season. He played. Devondre Campbell missed 6 games at times this season. He played in this game. So I think what we saw is a Packers team that lived up to its potential. And it's tough to live up to your potential when you're starting running backs out and your cornerbacks out. I mean, their secondary was fully healthy. It was nice to see that. The Cowboys side, though, no sacks, not a single sack, no interceptions. That defense just didn't show up. So while I agree with Jerry and your assessment of 32 points should have won it, let's also keep in mind that some of those points at the end were sort of garbage time, when the Packers were sort of backing up and playing on their heels a little bit, almost the prevent type defense. And so I think the Cowboys defense really let them down in this game. Not a good look for Dan Quinn, someone who has been talked about as a head coaching candidate potentially going forward. Not a good look for him. Where was Micah Parsons? They just weren't really putting any pressure on Jordan Love. But again, on the other side, let's give the offensive line for the Packers some credit too.
Yeah, they need their credit. They game planned perfectly. Jordan Love, spectacular again. This guy has really evolved as the season progressed here. Jerry was talking a bit about coaching in that little clip, but in your estimation, is McCarthy finished in Dallas?
I don't have like a strong opinion on this one way or another because it's Jerry Jones and nothing would shock me. He seems to like those like submissive coaches who aren't necessarily like a top tier coach, but he can get along with. And so it doesn't seem like Jerry Jones prioritizes winning. It seems like he prioritizes his business and making money. And yeah, he looks sad when the team loses and you see him get upset in the press box, but I think he's a businessman first and a team owner second. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. A lot of people have said this about Jerry Jones. So would I be stunned if he held on to McCarthy because it's easy to work with McCarthy and he's got a good rapport with him? Nah, I wouldn't be stunned. But am I leaning one way? I guess if I had to lean, I think McCarthy's probably out.
Before we move on to our next talking point here, thoughts either way on Dak and his time in Dallas? Is that going to be done here soon?
Man, that's a good question. It was funny seeing people call for Trey Lance. Even though he was the emergency quarterback and couldn't be brought into the game, we saw pundits out there saying, oh, get Trey Lance in the game. And so, I mean, on a serious note, that does put a little extra pressure on Dak. I've got no idea how Trey Lance has looked in practice or if he's putting a little, pressure on the Cowboys or anything like that, pressure on Dak or anything like that. But as poorly as Dak has played in the postseason, I think he's got some more time in Dallas. He's played really well, statistically especially, in the regular season. And it's just tough to find a good quarterback. If there were a handful of 5 or 6 really good free agents that you could see the Cowboys replacing him with, I might be more open to the idea of Dak not coming back to Dallas. But I think he's going to be there for a bit.
Detroit Lions get their first playoff win since 1992, Tony. Little trivia question for you. Who was the quarterback on the Lions that fine day?
Oh, gosh. Was this Scott Mitchell?
It is not. It is Eric Kramer.
Ooh. Oh, I wouldn't have got that with 5 guesses. Holy smokes. That's a good trivia question, man. Wow.
But obviously a huge, massive win for that city, for that franchise. And we've got a clip here of the locker room after that massive 1-point win over the Rams last weekend.
We play next Sunday back here at home, guys. Dude, how electric was it out there? I'm telling you what, it doesn't get any better. It's everything you dream up and then more. I got 2 game balls. All right, number 1, listen, when you come in 3 years ago, like me and this guy did, and you had a vision and you start working together and you've got an idea how you want to build it, I'm telling you guys, it's a shitty business. It ain't always perfect, but we do a pretty good job, dude. All right. But without this fucking guy right here, man, Brad Holmes.
I absolutely love every single person in this room, man. We were intentional on being about grit. Appreciate it. Especially this guy, man.
Okay, I'll just say it like this. All right? Hey, you're good enough for Detroit, Jay.
Hey, I love and appreciate you guys more than you fucking know. I promise you that. I love you guys so fucking much. This is just the beginning, boys. This is just the fucking beginning. We got 3 more of these next week at home, at our place, against whoever the fuck wants to come in here. Let's go. Win on 3, 1, 2, 3, win!
You can see why that team wants to play for Dan Campbell, man. Like, I feel like I'd run through a brick wall for that guy after that sort of stuff, man. But obviously a huge win, big time stuff. The Rams were sort of the one team that, according to sportsbooks, were being backed for the upset last weekend. But what did you make of that one?
Yeah, first of all, it was a fun game to watch. Probably the most entertaining game of the weekend. I like the Rams 3.5 when you were getting the hook there. That was pretty intriguing. Goff had his moment, man. You got to feel good for the guy. Like that's a cool moment that we just showed in the locker room. The team's rallying around him. I mean, contrast what we just saw in that clip with what we suspect is going on in the Eagles locker room right now. I mean, we got guys on the Eagles sideline seemingly yelling at each other. Yep. Jalen Hurts and Goddard kind of had a what I believe was a nasty moment between the two of them. Just the body language on that team, that is the exact opposite of what we're seeing in Detroit. And I think it does make them a little more dangerous in these playoffs. Obviously, any locker room you go into, you're going to see excitement and happiness after a playoff win. But there's a little extra something there in Detroit because of what they've come back from and what they've all been through together. And so the hunger's there. Nice to see Jared Goff get his moment. And the Lions are a tough team. You know, they were, as a 49er fan, they were the team coming into the playoffs that I was like, if I had to pick one, this team does scare me a little bit. One, because their offensive line is really good, and I think that they can help negate a good pass rush from a team like the 49ers that has a good defense. But also, Dan Campbell's a guy who's going to go for it on fourth down. He's going to throw fake punts at you, maybe a surprise onside kick. And if all of those stars align and they have their best game, and a team like the 49ers doesn't bring their A game, there's a path for the Lions to get to the Super Bowl for sure.
And sort of a sour return for Matty Stafford there as well.
Yeah. Did you see the press conference after the game where Stafford was asked about his time in Detroit? He gave like a one-sentence answer.
I didn't. What did he say?
Oh, gosh. So they asked him, and there was a big lead up to the question, like a long lead up from the reporter, like, hey, you spent a lot of time in Detroit, yada, 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 yada. How do you feel about how do you feel for Detroit or something like that? And it was just a one word, like, yeah, I'm happy for him. Like that's it. And there was like such a great opportunity for him to thank the fans. And I know they just booed him, and I'm sure that was still, on his mind. Some sourness there. I get it. But you saw his coach, McVay, talk more about how great the city of Detroit was and that relationship between Stafford and the city more than Stafford himself. So he dropped the ball there. I've never been a big Stafford guy. Do you remember the Super Bowl celebration where the poor woman fell off the stage and like literally broke bones in her back and Stafford just like, oop, and just walked away and let his wife deal with the situation? Like
tough look.
Not a good look. And I've heard all the excuses. Hey, he was drinking beers. It wouldn't have been appropriate for him to help in that condition. But just like the lack of humanity when you see someone get that injured, it's not a good look. Like if you had kids, Andrew, and your child's teacher during a parent-teacher conference is like, oh yeah, they were all out at the playground and little Susie fell off the monkey bars and broke her back. And your child wasn't interested in help and they just walked away. I think we'd be concerned about that kid and about their empathy and things like that. And so I lost all respect for Stafford when that happened. And then when I see him be a big baby in the press conference, that got me fired up too. And I'm also sick of hearing about how his kids were booed.
Did you?
Okay.
Did you know that he's like best friends with Clayton Kershaw though?
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I did not know that Stafford and Kershaw were best friends.
They went to, I can't remember if it was high school or whatever together, but every time they show either one of those dudes, man, that's like the story that they bring up. It's like, oh, these two guys were like good buds back in the day, whatever. But anyway, sorry, I cut you off there. Continue.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Somehow I missed the boat on that one. But so Kelly Stafford is complaining that her kids were booed. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I wouldn't put that past fans. We've seen Santa Claus get booed in other stadiums. Okay. So it's not hard for me to believe that children would get booed. But I think the more likely scenario here is that Kelly Stafford was getting booed and is either in denial about this or lacks the self-awareness to realize that she's had several behaviors through the years that make her deserving of boos. So the kids weren't by themselves on the 50-yard line and the fans booed them. She was with the kids and came out. So Kelly, I think you were getting booed. Kelly Stafford. Let's review her history in Detroit as the starting quarterback's wife.
You've come with receipts here. Go for it.
She sold Lions tickets online. Okay. She got criticized for that because you're a multimillionaire and you're trying to sell these 5 tickets because you have to go out of town to New Orleans. And so what is that? Like $1,500 you're trying to squeeze out of people instead of just giving them away, even though you're a multimillionaire. Not to mention, there's always the danger when you sell tickets that it could go to the opposing team. And now you're inviting other teams' fans into the stadium. So when Stafford was in LA, she was the keyboard warrior saying, hey, Rams fans, don't sell your tickets. Kelly Stafford, you sold Lions tickets, or at least attempted to before you were called out for it. What are you doing? She threw a soft pretzel at a 49er fan. Like, this is someone who does not control her emotions well.
At least it was a soft pretzel.
At least it was a soft pretzel.
Soft pretzel.
Good call. Absolutely. She called Michigan a dictatorship during the COVID lockdowns. So is it possible that the fans in Michigan were booing you because you called their state a dictatorship? Is it possible, Kelly, that the fans were booing you because you sold Lions tickets? Is it possible, or do you think they were booing your children who have harmed them and not offended them in any way? Oh, I forgot. Remember the false positive COVID test that Matthew Stafford had? And she went on a big rant about how this was the Lions' fault. And, she got so dramatic about how I can't even go out in public without people telling me, blah, 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 blah. So there's a list of behaviors that she's done that have caused herself to be booed. And when the fans are holding her accountable and booing her, she's making herself be the victim. And these terrible fans are booing my children. Kelly, I think they were booing you. I'm pretty sure.
Definite deflection there for sure. You've come prepared to pile on the elder Staffords, the Stafford parents. So yeah, you feel very strongly about that. Would Matthew Stafford be on, your most hated sort of list of quarterbacks or athletes? Like I feel like we've learned something today.
I would say he'd make the unlikable list.
The unlikable list?
We've got Kelsey up there for reasons we've already gone into.
Okay.
We've got Mahomes up there for reasons that we've already gone into.
Yep.
And maybe the other one, if this is going to be a Mount Rushmore, we're going to do a top 4. Someone I haven't talked about on this show a lot, but Nick Sirianni would be up there for me in my top 4. Like I took a lot of pleasure in seeing the Eagles lose this weekend because we've all seen that clip of him coming through the tunnel after the Chiefs win, just screaming like a sore winner, basically. And it's just fun to see that guy lose. So on the unlikable list, Stafford, Sirianni, Mahomes, and Kelsey would be my top 4 probably.
Very interesting. Join the legions of Philadelphia fans that are with you on that one.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, man. Like for me, I've said it on here before, but I'd throw LeBron as far as my list is concerned. Trevor Bauer. Throw him on the list of unlikable dudes. And then I'll go deep for a third one, and any Premier League fans will know, but I'll throw Matty Cash in the mix as well. Back-to-back seasons now, dirty tackles on Tottenham players and sent them off injured. So that would be my sort of, not a good look, unofficial list of Huddle unlikable athletes. But let me ask you this before.
Talk to me about Trevor Bauer for a second. What's your beef with Trevor Bauer?
Well, I mean, some of which we can't really talk about on the show. There are a lot of allegations about this dude.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
I mean, ton of stuff out there, but there's a reason he's pitching in Japan. I'll say that. But if you were, before we move on here, I want to talk because one of the things I like about the Lions is their offense as a whole, but like their pair of running backs, they're really, really good. But if you're starting a franchise from scratch today, and you had to pick one, Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson, so 2 highly touted running backs, who are you going with?
Wow, that's as close as it can get, Andrew. That is tough. With Gibbs, with both of these guys, I want to see them like with more carries. I feel like both of those guys kind of were held back this season, maybe for good reasons. You want to keep them fresh, you want to keep them healthy, but Gibbs is electric, man.
Yeah.
He's really fun to watch, but Oh, man, I'm going to waffle on this. Gun to my head, I think I've got to go with Bijan.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm going to go with Bijan, mainly because of that Detroit offensive line. Gibbs might look a little better than he actually is. So maybe Bijan on Detroit would have even better numbers, but I could be convinced either way. That's a tough question.
Yeah, it's a coin flip basically, but Miami KC, it was on streaming, and apparently it broke streaming records and internet use records. Like, it was the most streamed game ever in the U.S. And apparently Saturday night was the highest night of internet usage in history, which I may actually disagree with and counter with the day that the Pamela Anderson sex tape came out, because the halls of the dorm that I was living in at that time were very quiet that day, my friend. So, but anyway, that's no joke. That's no joke. Get that drum roll out of here. Get that rim shot out of here. That was legit, man. We were all on our computers that day. But purely based on the fact that some time ago, former ESPN head John Skipper had sort of floated the idea of the Super Bowl potentially being on pay-per-view. Do you think we see that at some point, Tony? Do you think there will be a time where the Super Bowl is a pay-per-view event?
It sounds like such a weird idea, right? Because it's not what we're used to. But the way the NFL is kind of doing these money grabs, and maybe they're kind of priming us for that. I think it's one of those like realities that I don't want to acknowledge, because the idea of it makes me cringe. But, not in the next couple years, but in the next 10 years, I could see it. And I hate that I'm saying it, but yeah, I wouldn't be stunned by that.
Yeah, I think I agree, man. I think I'm with you, though. Like, I think I'm living in some sort of denial that that's where we're trending. But I think, indeed, that's where the league and the sport is potentially trending. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Last one I want to get into before we talk a little bit about the divisional round before our picks. But Houston Texans, the sort of official team of the Huddle since early days this season. We love this team. I don't think either of us were surprised. I believe you had their money line on the show last week. I had the Dalton Schultz anytime touchdown. But your thoughts on the Texans over the Browns last weekend?
That was a fun game to watch. I mean, CJ Stroud is the real deal. Let me ask you, Andrew, where does he rank among top quarterbacks in the NFL right now for you? Where do you put him?
We sort of talked about this a couple months ago, maybe. We talked about power ranking our top 10, and it was CJ had sort of made it into both of our lists. I think right now, man, I'd have to give it some thought, but I can see him being top 6, top 7 in the NFL, full stop, right now. I think he had the best rookie quarterback season of all time. Back-to-back performances, to be fair, because we talked about that game against the Colts. That was basically a playoff game. And then last week in the official playoff game, Wild Card Weekend, he was exquisite in that game, man. He was spreading the ball around. It looked like he was like a 6-year vet. So without any thought, I have him in top 6, top 7, top 8 in the league. How about you?
Absolutely, man. I think there's an argument for top 5. I really do. I mean, and maybe Steve can fact check me on this. What was Nico Collins' career high for catches in a season coming into this year? I don't think he had more than 40 catches in a year coming into this. And now Nico Collins is like fantasy wide receiver 1. The guy's always open, it seems. Stroud is always hitting him. So Stroud is doing it with Tank Dell, who I think was a 3rd-round pick. And now he's hurt, of course. But he's making these guys who nobody had ever heard of. Not nobody. Casual fans had never heard of. He's making them look like superstars. Yeah. So what I find intriguing is, what if you have CJ Stroud and then you draft a 1st-round receiver on that team? Or what if you get a free agent pickup who's a true wide receiver 1 on that team with his current skill set? There's a little bit of room for improvement in the Texans' offensive line. It's not an elite offensive line. What if you gave CJ Stroud an elite offensive line. What if you put CJ Stroud on the Jaguars, where you've got a couple of decent weapons? Like, CJ Stroud is unbelievable. This guy is elite. The best touchdown to interception ratio of any quarterback in the NFL this year as a rookie with no true weapons, in my opinion. He's making them look like weapons. It is phenomenal. It's fun to watch. And we've learned the last 2 weeks now, he can play under pressure too in the NFL.
Nico Collins, rookie season, 33 catches, 446. Second year, 37 catches, 481. So in this year, year 3, he's one season. He's had more receptions and yards receiving than those first 2 seasons combined. That's what CJ Stroud brings out of a guy like Nico Collins. Crazy, man. But I loved it. Official team of the Huddle. Yeah, amazing stuff. CJ Stroud. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just add that whole point that I made earlier about why the Packers may have won because all those guys on defense were hurt. I could go through a similar list with the Texans, and be like, they were without Will Anderson for several games. He played. They were without Brian Cashman. He played. And so I think this is another situation where we're seeing the synergistic effect of all these players, all these starters finally being on the field all at the same time, pretty healthy. And that's gonna go a long way for the Texans on offense and defense. A couple wide receivers came back last week. We're seeing what this team can do at their full potential.
Your bizarre / crazy CJ Stroud trivia question of the day, Tony. So CJ Stroud now number 5 in Texans all-time history for passing yards in a career. So my question, I know it's a young franchise, but still, that's crazy. So my question to you, who are the top 4 quarterbacks in terms of career passing yards with the Texans?
Oh, my goodness. Matt Schaub's got to be up there.
He's number 1.
Matt Schaub is number 1. Man, it's such a bad quarterback history.
It's not great, man. It's not great.
This question shouldn't be that tough. Gosh. Well, Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson is 2.
Deshaun Watson. Man.
I got these. Not to pat myself on the back, but I got these when Steve asked me yesterday.
Schaub, Watson. I'm trying to think. They had a couple of playoff seasons. Who the heck was their quarterback under Bill O'Brien? Oh, it's escaping me right now. Yeah, I'm going to throw up the white flag on 3 and 4.
So number 3, David Carr.
Of course, David Carr. All right.
And number 4 would be a great pull, but it's Davis Mills, actually.
Wow.
Right?
That's impressive that Mills is up there already. Wow. Well, I guess a young franchise, it makes sense. Yeah.
Very young franchise. So, but I thought that was very interesting that CJ's already top number 5. I'd like to think that the Huddle had a little bit to do with that, with his ascension up the quarterback ranks. We've got picks coming up here, and we went 4-2 last week. The Cowboys stung us both, so we both went 2-1. We're actually, I believe, 16-7-1 in the last 4. But let's talk about the divisional round real quick before we get into picks, and we'll wrap this show up. Niners path. We are both Niners fans here. What do you make, without giving away too much if you've got a Niners pick on the show, but what do you make of that matchup with now the all of a sudden incredible Green Bay Packers coming to town?
Yeah, it's that whole, rest versus rust theory. The Niners haven't played for a couple weeks, and the Packers are red hot. So you could see a scenario where the Packers get up early in this game. The Niners just have a more talented roster, and they're not going to be sleeping on the Packers in this game. This is a 49er team that's had some devastating playoff losses, so I expect them to be completely locked in. In terms of the spread, I think I'd have to lean toward the Packers in this one just because I could see them getting a backdoor cover. Of course, wouldn't be shocked if the Niners blew them out either. But I think the 49ers are going to be okay in this game. I really do.
So we talked a little bit about 2 teams here that are coming off really good wins in the wild card round and have sort of picked up steam as the season progressed. So my question to you, with Dallas fizzling out big time, which is America's team, the Detroit Lions or the Houston Texans?
Oh, gosh. I've got to go with the Lions. I think people are just rallying around that whole, it's been a while since they won. They just got their first playoff win. Dan Campbell, the Lions, it wasn't too long ago that they were on, what's the name of that show? The HBO show?
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks, yeah. It wasn't too long ago that they were on Hard Knocks. So people feel like they've got an intimate connection with this team. And I think there'd be a lot more people celebrating in Detroit or throughout America for Detroit than there would be for the Texans. But how about this one? Since the Texans were a franchise, I believe 2001, 2002-ish, they have more playoff wins than the Cowboys. So as I said on Twitter last week, are the Cowboys even Texas's team?
No.
I mean, the Texans are giving them a run for their money right now, for sure.
Did San Antonio not have a CFL team back in the day when the Canadian Football League expanded into some American markets? Did the CFL, was San Antonio not one of those teams? My point being is that the ex-CFL San Antonio team is more of Texas team than the Dallas Cowboys is at this stage. So of the four matchups, we've got, the Ravens 9-point home faves against the Houston Texans. We've got the Niners. It's been 10. It's been 9.5. I'm seeing 9.5 right now. Point favorites over the Green Bay Packers. Those are the two Saturday games. We've got Detroit 6.5-point home faves over Tampa. And we've got the Buffalo Bills as field goal home faves against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So some of those teams have interesting quarterback. I think I know your answer to this question because we've just basically praised CJ Stroud all show. But if you had to pick one to lead your team from scratch, CJ, Brock Purdy, or Jordan Love, who you taking?
So you say from scratch, so to start a franchise with.
Start a
not
franchise.
Necessarily. Okay. I would have to go CJ. I really would. Love is intriguing though, man. It's just his arc. He's improving so quickly that I'm not sure where his ceiling is at. And so there's an argument to be made that Love could look better than Brock Purdy in 5 years. I'll tell you what, I've seen the stats of Brock Purdy's last 10 games and Jordan Love's last 10 games. Jordan Love's numbers look better than Purdy's, and it's not even close. I mean, so I think the Love-Purdy gap is closer than people think, but I would still have to go Purdy over Love. So Stroud, Purdy, Love, but you can make some arguments other way for sure.
I hate to be aligned on basically. I hate to be aligned on everything, but I think I'm the same. I think CJ is really a no-brainer in that one. As much as I love Brock Purdy, and as much as Jordan Love has been sort of eye-catching throughout the season, especially starting with that Thanksgiving Day game, he's been really, really good. But all three of those very, very good quarterbacks, of course. But I'm aligned with you on that one. The San Antonio Texans were a Canadian Football League team that played in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas in the 1995 CFL season. So I wasn't making shit up. So that's good. All right, Tony, we are sort of red hot with picks. Like I said, 16-7-1 in the last 4 episodes. So basically we're going 2-1 each here with our 3 picks. But get us started here. What are you looking at for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs?
No surprise here. I like the Texans plus 9.5. I looked this morning. I did see a couple 9.5s in the market. It's mostly 9s. So if by the time you're seeing this show, it's all 9s, I still like it at 9 as well. Lamar Jackson's playoff history hasn't been great. We know that. The Texans defense is legit right now. They've got really 3 good pass rushers on the edge. As I talked about, they're healthy. All these guys are on the field together for really like the first time all season, completely healthy. That defense is good, and they've got a great guy calling the plays on defense. You've got to love what D'Amico Ryans has done. I think he can give Lamar Jackson some trouble. And I think this is a team that whenever I'm taking a big dog like this, I always like to ask myself, can I see a scenario where they come in the back door? So at plus 9.5, do you think the Texans can be within 16 in the fourth quarter? And if the answer is yes, which I think that's a strong yes for me, then I like the Texans side here. Maybe a little sprinkle on the money line. I have a big futures position on Houston, so I'm probably not going to touch the money line here, but I don't think that's a bad idea either. Wouldn't be stunned if the Texans upset the Ravens here.
Love it. Official team of the Huddle. I'm sticking with this game. I hit Dalton Schultz last week, but I'm going to go Isaiah Likely anytime touchdown here this week at plus 210. Texans sort of rank in the bottom 5 for passing yards and receptions to opposing tight ends. And Baltimore is going to have a couple of very good ones in the mix here in this one. It's because Andrews is back. He's looking likely to make his much anticipated return to that Ravens offense, which is obviously trouble for the rest of the remaining teams. Baltimore probably won't go with Likely and Andrews in 2 tight end sets because they have in the past and it wasn't always super effective. But no need to just have Andrews on the field for a massive percentage of sets because Likely has been really freaking good to close the season. 5 touchdowns over the last 5 games of the regular season to close the season and give Harbaugh a couple of legit weapons at that tight end position. Obviously great to have Andrews back, but give me Likely to hit pay dirt this week.
Very good. I've got the over in the 49er Packers game, over 50.5. 51 is a pretty key number when we start looking at totals, so I like that it's under that threshold there. You've given Kyle Shanahan 2 full weeks to prepare. Kyle Shanahan's a guy who will come up with plays on the fly. He'll design new plays during a week, a couple days before the game. I've even heard stories of players saying, like having the coach come up to him the day of the game and be like, hey, we're going to run this new play. So you're giving a genius like this 2 weeks to prepare. I think he's going to have something special here for the Packers. The 49ers are fresh. The Packers are hot. Both teams are healthy on offense. Aaron Jones looks darn good. And if you want a little bonus pick here from me, Aaron Jones over on his rushing yards prop. Dude's had 100-yard games 3 games in a row, and he looks as good as I've ever seen Aaron Jones. So I think both of these offenses could look really good right here in this game. Give me the over.
Yeah, cautious optimism, I think, going into this one for Niners fans. But yeah, Bucks at Lions for me. I'm going to go with the dog here. Bucks plus 6.5. It's time to just stop sleeping on this team. I know Philly had its flaws, and that really showed down the stretch, but Tampa put an absolute beatdown on them, and Baker was fantastic. They finished 5-1 in their last 6 in the regular season as well. The team got hot at the right time, and it's a little revenge spot there as well. Detroit won the previous meeting 20-6 back in week 6. That launched a 4-game losing streak for Tampa. Baker couldn't get going in that one. The run game wasn't working. Nothing going right for Tampa in that game. So plenty of learns to potentially keep this one close on Sunday. And both these run defenses are elite and potentially keep this a tight 1-possession affair. Detroit number 2 and Tampa number 4 in terms of opponent rushing yards per game. And it should also be known, Tampa 9-3 ATS as underdogs this season, including that wildcard game. I like a close one here, but give me the road dog.
And before I get into my last pick, I'm going to back you up here on this one, Andrew. That same formula that I gave of all these guys being out and now they're all healthy at the same time. Jamel Dean missed 5 games for the Bucs earlier this season. Carlton Davis missed 5 games for the Bucs. Those are their 2 starting cornerbacks. So we haven't seen many games where both of these guys are on the field at once. Cansey, their defensive tackle, missed 6 games. Vita Vea missed 3 games. Those are 2 big defensive tackles. This team is getting healthy at the right time, for sure, especially on the defensive side of the ball. My last pick here, I got a little prop for you. How about the Packers plus 270 to score a touchdown on their first drive of the game?
Wow.
When the Packers are confident, when they're confident, I believe they are right now, we've seen them, when they win the coin toss, they choose to receive and they go down the field and they score a touchdown. We saw it on Thanksgiving when nobody thought they were going to beat the Lions. And we saw it last week. They had practically an 8-minute drive against the Cowboys to score a touchdown on that drive. So you've got a 49er team that's rusty. Eric Armstead playing his first game in many weeks for the 49ers. He could be rusty and have an Aaron Jones run right at him. So I really like the value here on plus 270 for the Packers to score a touchdown on their first drive and give the 49ers a little sweat early.
Is there an element of emotional hedging in that? Like, I feel like, you're going to try and come out on top no matter what happens. How dare you? How dare you against our beloved 49ers? Last one for me, Chiefs at Bills here. I'm going prop as well, but I'm going James Cook over 62.5 rushing yards at -115. It was 58.5 yesterday, but second highest rushing yards in the regular season. Most yards, including the playoffs at 778 at Highmark Stadium. Plus, he's eclipsed this number in 7 home games this season, including last week. Speaking of last week, 18 carries, 79 yards on the ground. Leaned on him a lot in that one. I think that's his 3rd most carries on the season. And another potential revenge spot here. KC has done the business on Buffalo a couple times. Twice in the last 4 years. KC has knocked Buffalo out of Super Bowl contention. But a bit of a twist in this one with KC playing their first road game in the postseason in the Patrick Mahomes era. Should be a great finale for the NFL playoffs this weekend, but I'm on Cook over 62.5 rushing yards. So there you go, 6 picks. We're on a bit of a tear here in the last 5 episodes. But Tony, gun to your head, straight up upset. Who's the live dog here?
For this weekend, who's the live dog? Oh, man.
I've put you on the spot here a handful of times in this episode, and I apologize for that. But
no, I like it. It's good for me. I gotta go Texans, man. I gotta go Texans. I know it's one of the bigger point spreads, but is this a little bit of my heart? Is there a little bias here? Is there recency bias because I just saw C.J. Stroud light up a defense last week? Sure, I'll own all of that, but I think the Texans are very much live here against the Ravens. I really do. I think this team is just so underrated. I'll say it for the 5th time in this show. I feel like they're getting healthy at the right time on offense and defense. And I think that they could potentially catch the Ravens off guard here.
I agree. I think the Texans are in play, but I got to go Tampa Bay as the live dog this weekend, man. You talked about them getting healthy. They're playing really well the last couple months or so. And let's not forget, Detroit almost lost that game last week. We could be here talking about a different situation. So they're lucky to be here. So Tampa Bay, keep an eye on them as a bit of an upset as well. Follow Tony on Twitter at Tony's Market Tips. Whatever you find folks do with your bets this weekend, best of luck. And we'll catch you next week to talk about the next round of the NFL playoffs. And let's try and bring the San Antonio Texans back, baby.